This is Matt Roush, Technology Editor at WWJ News Radio 950. I'm here today with Linda Watson of Clark Hill. Linda, we're going to talk today a little bit about collection problems, which is, more and more of an issue these days with the economy and the condition it's in. When you have a customer, you're in business, you have a customer that can't or won't pay, where is a lawsuit in terms of your options? Where should that be?
Well, it depends, Matt. It depends on a couple of things. You need to first determine whether or not this is just a blip in the radar in terms of financial problems with the company, or if it's something more serious, and possibly a situation in which the customer is going to close their doors. If the customer is going to close their doors and you have a pretty good sense of that, then I would clearly recommend to file a lawsuit, because the whole idea is to be the first one to get the judgment. It's almost like the concept of, first in time, first in line. So in that situation, I would say certainly, yes, a lawsuit's important.
Besides a lawsuit, what other options are available?
Well, if in fact, let's talk about the first scenario that I already mentioned, and that is if it's not a blimp on the radar and it's an important, serious situation where they may close their doors, the other option may be to do absolutely nothing, and to really just walk away from the lost money. It's kind of the theory of don't throw good money after bad. It's nice I can get anybody a judgment, in those situations, but it's not going to do you any good hanging on the wall. Right. If it's a situation where it's just a blip on the radar, there's all kinds of options you have. My suggestion would be, if it's a blip on the radar, first and foremost, intervene quickly, and on the balance that's due and owing, get some payment terms on it. Make some arrangements. You may have to force that situation, because there's sometimes where you're trying to get the client's attention and you can't. There may be situations where you have to stop doing current work or new work in order to get their attention and to get those arrangements. At that point in time, the only other thing I would recommend is take advantage and look at new terms going forward.
So are there provisions that businesses might want to consider writing into contracts to protect themselves from customers who can't or won't pay?
Sure, that's a good question. Yes, there are. What you want to do is probably take a look at the contracts you have. Everybody can always improve their contracts, particularly in these challenging economic times. What you want to do now is you want to make certain that your payment terms are clear. And you want to make sure that you have a termination provision. You'd be surprised how many agreements I look at after the fact, when we're actually in litigation, that don't have clear payment terms and don't have clear termination provisions. So those are probably two of the most important provisions I would take a look at and beef up and make very clear. I would also consider adding provisions for security. That may be creating some type of security interest in assets that your customer has, or it could be getting a personal guarantee. Personal guarantees are typically hard to get, but in this economy, and if your services or your goods are in demand, it's not necessarily something that's going to be an immediate no.
Okay. How is dealing with business payment disputes different today than it was even just a few years ago?
Well, I would say that there's three things that have changed today, and that is today. Perhaps you didn't have to do it yesterday, but in today's economy, you have to intervene quickly. If you see somebody that's out 60 to 90 days and you have net 30 terms, you need to move quickly. You can't wait more than the 90 days. And you need to sit down with them and you need to figure out if it's a blip or if it's a serious financial situation. And again, follow what we discussed earlier. Either you're going to institute a lawsuit or you're going to work out immediate payment terms. At that point, you have to determine whether to, what I like to say, exit or escalate. You're going to either exit the relationship and walk away from the money because it's not worth going after, or you're going to escalate the situation and you're going to go after the money by filing a lawsuit. The third thing I think that's different is that you have to review and restructure your agreements, just like what we were talking about. The agreements that you used to use aren't going to work in this economy, and this economy isn't going to change overnight. So you definitely want to look at the agreements. You want to make sure that you have shorter payment terms. You want to make sure you've got clear termination provisions. You want to make certain that you've got some type of security to protect you. And last but not least, and we haven't discussed this, is that I would make a provision for the recovery of attorney fees and costs should you have to go after and try and collect those monies.
Okay. A lot of talk about bankruptcy these days. What should a company's first steps be if it turns out that the person who isn't paying goes into bankruptcy, say a Chapter 11?
Right. There's two steps. One is get some assurances on your current contract that they're going to live by that contract. If not, then you have a way out of producing, continuing to produce in a bankruptcy situation. The second thing is file your proof of claim. If there's a balance due and owing to you, you only have a certain period of time as a creditor to file a proof of claim. At that point, you will also determine whether you're a secured creditor, a creditor with some security interest that sits in a better position, or if you're an unsecured creditor. But regardless, in either position, you're going to file a proof of claim. And then the third thing I would just mention is that you also want to be aware that there might be a preference action filed against your company. If you did receive payment within a 90-day window or sometimes back to a year, that could be money that the bankruptcy trustee could look towards your company to try and recover.
Mm-hmm. So it's not always good in a bankruptcy to have been the last one paid, right?
That's true, yes.
All right. Thank you, Linda Watson of Clark Hill. This is Matt Roush, Technology Editor, WWJ News Radio 950.